When was the last time you stood before the mirror, not just to adjust your appearance, but to truly look into your own eyes and ask, am I living the life I was meant to live? Not the one shaped by expectation, not the version of life that pleases society, earns applause, or follows a script written by others, but the life that stirs something ancient and honest within your soul. Carl Jung, a pioneer of modern psychology, left us with a truth too many are afraid to live by. You must choose yourself, even when the world is screaming at you to conform, even when the current of culture pulls you in the opposite direction. Because we live in a world designed to distract, a labyrinth of noise, routine, and external validation that keeps you far from your own essence. From the moment you wake, the world rushes in. Responsibilities, deadlines, social roles, work expectations, family obligations, cultural scripts that whisper what you should want, how you should act, and what success should look like. But here's the truth most run from. Every time you abandon your own needs to meet the expectations of others, you quietly tell your soul, you don't matter. That voice, faint but persistent, that rises from the depths of your being. It's trying to guide you, but when you ignore it, you silence your own compass. And with every step taken for others, but not yourself, you drift further from the life that would have set your spirit on fire. Jung taught that the unconscious isn't just a part of us, it is us. To ignore it is to live only half a life. But many do just that, because listening to it is not always easy. It confronts us with discomfort. It challenges the life we've built on pretense. That unease you feel when something isn't quite right. That tightness in your chest, that vague sense of being lost. That is not coincidence. That is your soul speaking in the language of discomfort. It is trying to wake you up. And though the thought of change can feel terrifying, what's even more terrifying is spending your entire life ignoring the very core of who you are. So pause now and ask yourself honestly, how many of your recent choices were born from authenticity, and how many were born from fear? Fear of disappointing others, fear of standing alone, fear of letting go of what is familiar, even if it no longer fits. Jung understood this deeply. Decisions not rooted in your inner truth only breed chaos and disconnection. The more you ignore yourself, the more fragmented and confused your life becomes. But let's be clear, choosing yourself does not mean rejecting others. It's not about isolation or selfishness. It's about alignment. It's about realizing that you cannot give love, truth, or presence to the world until you have first given them to yourself. This is the essence of self-love. Not a cliché, not an indulgence, not a reason to escape your responsibilities, but a sacred commitment to wholeness. It's the soil from which all real connection grows. When you honor your truth, your energy shifts. You stop attracting what drains you. You begin to resonate with people and opportunities that reflect your inner essence. The universe, in its mysterious way, begins to respond. Not with noise, but with clarity. But to reach that clarity, you must pass through shadow. You must face the hidden parts of yourself, the wounded, the angry, the envious, the afraid. Jung called this the shadow, the dark side of our psyche where we store everything we'd rather deny. But within that darkness lies your power. Not the power to dominate, but the power to heal and become whole. Because when you finally stop running from your shadow, when you turn and face it with compassion, transformation begins. You don't just change, you become more integrated, more resilient, more real. This isn't a one-time revelation, it's a lifelong process. One that asks for your courage, your patience, your relentless honesty. But what you gain is priceless. Clarity, true clarity, not filtered through fear. Purpose, not borrowed from someone else's dream. Inner peace, a silence that hums beneath the chaos. And perhaps most importantly, you gain the sacred ability to say no. No to what doesn't serve your growth, no to what violates your integrity, no to the voices that want you small, and you say it without guilt, without fear, without apology, but most of all, you gain the freedom to be you. You might be wondering, how do I begin this journey? The answer is far simpler than it seems. Listen, every time discomfort rises, every time you feel tension or confusion, pause and ask, what is my unconscious trying to tell me? Because, as Jung once said, who looks outside dreams, but who looks inside awakes. The answers you've been chasing are not out there. They are within you, but it takes courage to listen, and even more to live by what you hear. Sometimes the hardest thing we'll ever do is listen to the quiet voice inside that tells us the truth we don't want to hear. Maybe it's a relationship that has long lost its tenderness. Maybe it's a job that suffocates your spirit no matter how well it pays. Or perhaps it's a dream that no longer belongs to you, but you keep chasing it because once upon a time it made sense. Jung reminds us, ignoring these subtle inner whispers isn't courage. It's denial. Denial of your essence, of your right to evolve. To choose yourself is to gather the strength to release what no longer belongs in your life. And yes, that kind of courage is terrifying. We cling to the familiar not because it fulfills us, but because it's predictable. We say, better the devil you know, and settle for a life half-lived. But Jung saw change not as an end, but as a sacred passage, a doorway to the self. So ask yourself, what are you still holding on to that has outlived its place in your story? What relationships, beliefs, or habits have become cages made of fear? The loss you fear isn't in letting go. The real loss is what slips through your fingers when you betray your own peace to keep what no longer serves you. The question is no longer, what do they need from me? But am I ready to need myself? Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it is the most profound act of self-respect, the most honest form of love. For too long, society has trained us to feel guilt for prioritizing our own well-being, as if care for the self must always come last. But when you finally choose yourself, truly, consciously, a subtle magic begins to unfold. It's like fog lifting after a long storm. Clarity returns. And with it, the truth. Those who genuinely love you stay. Those who only loved your silence, your sacrifices, your compliance, begin to fall away. That is not coincidence, it is alignment. Jung called this synchronicity, when the internal world begins to mirror the external, and life starts responding to your truth. But for this to happen, something is required of you. Radical honesty, a kind of truth-telling that strips away every mask. Choosing yourself isn't just about saying no to others. It's about finally saying yes to the parts of yourself you've silenced. Yes to the voice that said, "This isn't who I am." Yes to the pain you buried. Yes to the boundaries you never enforced. And no, this isn't a moment for judgment. This is your invitation, your moment to begin again. Jung taught us that authenticity is not a destination. It's a process. A daily, courageous unfolding into who you are becoming. And it will challenge you. Old habits will beg you to return. Doubts will rise like ghosts, whispering that the old path was safer. But here's the truth. Real transformation does not happen in the comfort zone. It begins where the ground shakes, where you let go of the handrails, where you step beyond what is known and into what is true. And not everyone will understand. Some will criticize, some will drift away. You will stop fitting into molds you once contorted yourself to squeeze into. And yes, it may hurt, but something remarkable will begin to shift. You'll stop needing validation. You'll stop asking, do they approve? And start asking, does this honor who I am? This isn't isolation, it's liberation. Because when you choose yourself, your relationships begin to evolve. No longer do you chase people for acceptance. You begin to attract those who recognize your light without demanding you dim it. You stop settling for surface-level connection. You crave soul-nourishing, truth-honoring love. And then something beautiful happens. The right people stay, not because they need you, but because they see you, just as you are. And that is the beginning of a life lived in alignment. This shift is not a miracle. It is not magic. It is the sacred interplay between your inner and outer worlds. Jung believed that the psyche projects outward. If you live in internal chaos, you will attract external chaos. If you reject yourself, you will encounter rejection again and again. But if you choose yourself, if you stand firm in self-acceptance, your world shifts, subtly, slowly, then all at once. It doesn't happen overnight. It is a journey, a slow alchemy of the soul, a shedding of false skins, a becoming. And as you continue, you'll find that even the difficult days are part of the process. Even the doubts serve a purpose. Because every time you return to your center, you come home. to you. There will be backward moments, echoes of old patterns that rise when you least expect them. A familiar urge to people please. A silence you once used to avoid conflict. These regressions are not failures, they are tests. Soul-forged trials. The universe doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be awake, to hold the line when it trembles, to remain loyal to your transformation even when the world calls you back to the comfort of who you used to be. This is the real courage, not the grand gestures, but the quiet refusal to betray yourself. Choosing yourself, especially in moments of discomfort or loneliness, is an act of sacred rebellion. In a world that glorifies sacrifice, we are taught that abandoning ourselves is noble, that to pour endlessly into others is a sign of virtue. But Jung would ask, at what cost? What happens when we give until we are hollow? When our energy is so depleted, there's nothing left for our own becoming. What happens when we lose ourselves in the process of being everything for everyone? The truth is simple, yet often ignored. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot give light when your own fire is extinguished. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it is survival. It is the soil in which authentic giving can take root. Only when you are aligned with your truth, when you are whole, can you offer anything of real value to others. So choose yourself, not once, not only when it's easy or applauded. Choose yourself every day, in the smallest, most quiet of decisions, in the way you speak to yourself, in the boundaries you set, in the dreams you dare to protect. As you do, you'll begin to witness something extraordinary, your life transforming, not through force, but through truth. Jung once said we cannot give what we do not possess. So if you sacrifice your joy, your energy, or your inner peace in a desperate attempt to be accepted or loved, what you offer is not love, it is a shadow of it. And eventually, that shadow shows up in your life as exhaustion, resentment, or an aching emptiness you can't explain. Take a moment to reflect on your relationships. Which ones make your soul feel weightless? Which ones feel like home? And which ones leave you depleted, unseen, or aching in silence? Jung saw relationships not merely as connections, but as mirrors. Every person we hold close reflects some hidden aspect of our inner world, our wounds, our beliefs, our self-worth. If you continuously allow someone to cross your boundaries, it may not be because they are cruel, but because some forgotten part of you still believes you don't deserve protection. But you do. Setting boundaries is not rejection, it is reverence. Not an act of isolation, but of self-respect. Jung believed that the unconscious is always nudging us toward wholeness. That exhaustion you feel after a certain interaction, that subtle dread before seeing someone, these are not coincidences. These are your unconscious waving red flags, whispering, this is not love, this is not truth. To choose yourself is to finally listen. To say no, not from anger, but from alignment. To close the door, not in hatred, but in peace, because every no to what dims you is a yes to your light. This isn't about cutting everyone out. It's about clarity. It's about looking inward and asking, which relationships nurture my becoming and which ones keep me small? As you begin to live from this place of inner honesty, your intuition awakens. The voice that once felt distant, faint, or unsure begins to speak louder, clearer, steadier. Your choices start to align, not only with logic, but with a deeper rightness, the kind that's felt in the body, in the soul. This is the quiet revolution of self-trust. Jung believed intuition is one of the purest expressions of the unconscious, that mysterious knowing that arrives before thought. But to hear it, you must quiet the noise. You must detach from the addiction to approval, release the need to be everything for everyone, and come home to your own wisdom. When you finally choose yourself, the message is unmistakable. It ripples outward, into the world, into the unseen. The universe responds. Suddenly, you begin to attract what matches your vibration. People who see you. Opportunities that feel like alignment, not obligation. The things that once seemed impossibly out of reach now arrive not through chasing, but through being. This is not fantasy. This is the law of inner alignment. And no, it doesn't mean the path will be free of obstacles. In truth, some of the hardest battles will begin once you choose yourself, because the world has grown comfortable with your compliance. It expects your silence, your sacrifice, your shape-shifting. The moment you resist that mold, the pressure intensifies, the old life tugs at you. The doubts return. Fear whispers, "You're being selfish, they'll leave you." But listen deeper. Every time you hold your ground, every time you protect your energy, every time you say yes to your peace over their expectations, you reclaim a piece of yourself. And these small moments of truth, they become a symphony, a rising song of your liberation. That is where your true power lies. Each time you choose yourself, the self you are becoming grows stronger, quieter perhaps, but more rooted. You begin to realize that your worth was never meant to be negotiated in the court of public opinion. The key is to remain steadfast, even when uncertainty creeps in like a mist through the cracks of your mind. It is completely natural to feel fear when you begin to let go of the familiar, even if that familiarity no longer nourishes your spirit. Fear is not weakness. It is the echo of old safety patterns clashing with your soul's desire for freedom. But remember this: every time you choose to stay in a place that no longer brings you joy, you are not just standing still. You are closing the door on something that could profoundly transform you. The universe waits with open arms, but it can only fill the space you are willing to empty. The great psychologist Carl Jung taught us that transformation does not occur without resistance. In fact, resistance is not the enemy. It is not proof of failure, nor a warning to retreat. It is the sacred tension, the friction between who you were and who you are becoming. It is the necessary pain of rebirth. To feel fear is not to falter. To feel doubt is not to regress. These are merely signs that you are stepping into the unknown. And in that unknown, your most authentic self awaits. One of the most powerful ways to overcome resistance is through deep and radical self-reflection. Ask yourself, gently but earnestly, what do I truly value? What matters to me, not to my parents, not to society, not to my past, but to me now? What kind of life do I want to build if no one were watching or judging? The more clarity you find in these questions, the more your path begins to unfold, not as a blueprint, but as a compass. And as your inner compass aligns with your core values, something magical begins to happen. You start attracting people and circumstances that mirror that inner clarity. The world outside bends in response to the frequency within. Jung said that what you resist not only persists but will grow in size. But when you stop resisting your truth, when you honor what is within, the energy shifts. You realize you are not alone. What once felt like a solitary act, choosing yourself, becomes a lighthouse. It draws others who have made the same sacred vow to live in truth. These are not people who want to mold you. They are people who see you and celebrate you as you are. When you reach this point, where you are surrounded by souls who see your essence, not your mask, something inside you changes forever. Life no longer feels like an endless struggle to be seen, understood, or validated. Decisions that once felt paralyzing now come with clarity and confidence. You stop second-guessing your intuition. You begin to trust your body's wisdom, your heart's quiet urgings. And most importantly, you discover a kind of peace that no external circumstance can give or take away. Jung reminded us that true peace comes only from within. It is not found in applause or approval. It is found in alignment. It is the soft stillness that arises when you stop betraying yourself. This inner peace is not passive, it is powerful, because it allows you to act not from fear, but from freedom. It becomes the ground beneath your feet, no matter what storm is swirling around you. When you begin to live in alignment with your truth, your boundaries, your values, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Your life becomes a living example of authenticity, and in doing so, you offer others permission to do the same. Your courage to choose yourself becomes a silent but powerful invitation. You can too. Jung understood this ripple effect deeply. He believed that by healing and individuating ourselves, we help heal the collective psyche. When you choose truth over comfort, you don't just transform your own life, you become a catalyst for change in the lives around you. Every act of self-honoring ripples outward, Like a stone dropped into a still pond, touching shores you cannot even see. You never know who you're inspiring just by being yourself. The light you shine through your integrity becomes a beacon for others still lost in the fog. And in this way, choosing yourself becomes an act of service. So pause for a moment, close your eyes. Imagine what your life could look like if you released everything that no longer serves you. What if you let go of the relationships that drain you, the roles that suffocate you, the expectations that were never yours to carry? What would it feel like to walk through life unburdened? Imagine the spaciousness, the clarity, the joy. This is not a distant dream. It is not some spiritual fantasy. It is a real and grounded possibility. It lives just beyond your fear, waiting to be claimed. And all it asks of you is this: choose yourself. Choose your healing. Choose your truth. Choose your path, even if no one else understands it. When you do, you'll see that you weren't losing anything by letting go. You are gaining everything your soul has longed for. You are not giving up. You are making room. Room for peace, for purpose, for presence. The fall of the mask and the rise of authentic power. There comes a quiet moment in your journey when the endless chase for validation simply begins to dissolve. Not because the world stops demanding your proof, but because your soul no longer needs permission to exist. The compulsion to be accepted, the hunger to be liked, the urge to prove yourself to everyone you meet. These patterns lose their power. You see them now for what they were: inherited survival strategies, shaped by wounds, passed down by generations too afraid to be real. You begin to feel it in your bones, this gentle but unshakable sense of enoughness. You don't need to outshine anyone. You don't need to compete or conform. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that your worth is not up for negotiation. You are not here to fit in. You are here to be whole. And from that space, something miraculous begins to awaken. A power emerges, not the kind that seeks to control or dominate, but a quieter, deeper force. A power that pulses from the center of your being. It is the voice that never shouted, but always knew. The stillness within that stayed even when everything around you fell apart. This is not the power the world teaches you to admire. It is not loud. It does not beg for applause. But it is infinite. This is the power of authenticity, of alignment, of standing fully in your truth. The ripple effect of living your truth. When you align with your soul, when you finally root yourself in what is real for you, you become immovable. Not rigid, but centered. Not inflexible, but anchored. And in that place, the world around you can no longer shake you from your path. You no longer shrink when others disapprove. You no longer distort yourself to be loved. And here's the beauty: you don't just heal yourself. You become a living permission slip for others. Your presence becomes a quiet revolution. You don't preach or demand. You don't beg anyone to follow. You simply become. And your being disrupts the matrix of pretense that surrounds you. Others begin to notice. Not because you tell them you've changed, but because they feel something different in you. They see the light in your eyes, the steadiness in your presence, the honesty in your boundaries. You give them courage, not by instructing them, but by simply being real. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He saw that the individual's transformation is never isolated. Every person who chooses authenticity lights a fire in the collective soul. When one person dares to be fully themselves, they create ripples in the field of consciousness. They offer the world an alternative to the masks and the noise, a doorway to what is true. 30 minutes, 55 seconds, 31 minutes, 40 seconds. The sacred storms of doubt. But let us not romanticize the journey. Let us not pretend it is always upward motion or radiant ease. Because the truth is, authenticity often requires you to walk through darkness, to doubt, to tremble, to break. There will be days when the path feels solid beneath your feet, and then there will be days when the fog rolls in, when your vision blurs and the voices of fear echo louder than your intuition. You may wonder if you're lost, if you've made a mistake, if all this effort is worth it. These moments do not mean you've failed. They are not signs that you are broken or weak. In fact, they are sacred initiations. Jung called them invitations, portals to deeper integration. These are the nights of the soul that refine your strength and shatter your illusions. In these seasons, do not run, do not numb. Sit with the silence. Ask your heart what it needs. Let yourself fall apart if you must, because it is in the breaking that you meet the parts of yourself you abandoned long ago. Each shadow, each doubt, each wound, if embraced, becomes a doorway back to your essence. Trusting the invisible support. You are not alone, even when the path feels lonely. Though the journey begins in solitude, it does not stay there. The more you honor your truth, the more the universe aligns to support you. People appear, kindred spirits, who recognize your energy, even if they can't explain why. Books find their way into your hands. Conversations arrive at just the right moment. Signs, dreams, and synchronicities remind you that something larger is walking with you. The world begins to mirror your courage. The more you walk in alignment, the more the external begins to reflect the internal. You start to live in harmony with the deeper rhythm of life. And what once felt like a battle becomes a homecoming. You no longer feel like you're fighting against the world. You feel like you're returning to it, not as a stranger trying to be accepted, but as a soul fully belonging. This is grace. This is alignment. This is the sacred reunion with yourself. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. But most of all, thank you for remembering who you are. You are not alone. You never were. And the moment you decide to choose yourself,